between 85 and 87%. And the adjustments we are making together with the debt exchange means that we're aiming that by 2028, we should bring the debt to GDP below 60%. We had a credit rating of B-. And if you know that we currently are junk status, you understand what I mean. When they say your economy is at junk status, it means it's baller. Your economy is at baller. And then we had a budget deficit of 6.1%, which is a fairly good budget deficit, because the Fiscal Responsibility Act says that you should keep the budget deficit below 5%. And so we had a budget deficit of 6.1%, just above the 5%. And then we had a stable currency, which had a depreciation rate annually of 7%. We had industry growing at 4.3% and manufacturing subsector growing at 7.9%. We also had single-digit unemployment rate at 8.4%. And the IMF and Economic Intelligence Unit predicted that in the year following, which was 2017, because of the work we had done in 2016 in stabilizing the economy was going to grow by 8%. And so that 8% growth that we saw in 2017 had absolutely nothing to do with the MPP administration. Indeed, by the time they read their budget and started to implement, there's no way they could have influenced that growth. And yet they tout it as one of their achievements. And just imagine that even after 2017, subsequent years, the growth started to go down. When they started managing the economy themselves, just look at the growth chart. It went down to 6 point something, to 5 point something, until it eventually ended up at zero. Now, during our period in office, we realized that we needed to find new sources of revenues. And the traditional pillars of our economy were the oil and gas sector, the cocoa sector, the gold sector, and non-traditional exports. Non-traditional exports are dependent totally on the private sector, and so it has continued to do well. Of course, you also have remittances. Remittances comes to about 4 billion a year, and that has nothing to do with government's performance. But the other sectors, in terms of the gold sector, in terms of cocoa, and in terms of oil and gas, you have to create a favorable environment for those sectors to thrive. Unfortunately, under 8 years of the MPP administration, the reverse has been the case. And so when we're in office, we created a good environment. And so a lot of investors came into the oil and gas sector. That is, by the time we left office, we had brought on stream 2 new oil fields. In 2010, our first oil field started, which was Jubilee. And that was the only field we had until I came into government. By the time I left government, we had added a 10th field, and we had added the ENI Sankofa field. And so this increased Ghana's oil and gas production. And it was good for the economy because we got more gas to reduce our dependence on crude oil for electricity generation. And then also we got more oil to be able to bring in foreign exchange. We incentivized the cocoa sector, and so by the time we left office, we exported almost 1 million tons, 967,000 metric tons approximately. That brought in almost $2 billion into the fund, into the country. Aside from that, we created buffers in order to make the economy resilient. We established the stabilization fund, and if you remember, during COVID, when government had no money at all to start the fight against COVID, we reminded them that there was money in the stabilization fund, and the money in the stabilization fund is supposed to be used when there are emergencies. And so they took $270 million or so out of the stabilization fund. We also left money in the Ghana Infrastructure Investment Fund, which we're going to start and use as our sovereign wealth fund. And we left about $250 million in that fund. We also established a sinking fund, which was to be used to retire debt that was oncoming. And so the money that we left in the sinking fund is what Ken Ofori-Atta used in September the next year when the Kufuor Eurobond became due. That is what he used to offset it. If we had not set that money aside, it would have created a crisis because government would have had to look immediately for that kind of money to be able to do that. And so when they exhausted all these buffers, the sinking fund, they used it. Stabilization fund was used. Ghana Infrastructure Investment Fund, they used it. They did not replenish the sinking fund. And yet they went on a borrowing spree, borrowing almost $3 billion every year, most of which was going into consumption instead of into infrastructure and production. And that's why in a 5-year period, they borrowed almost $11.5 billion. And that is what has created the unsustainable debt that we have. But it raises issues of conflict of interest because the finance minister had Data Bank, which was his own bank, being the broker for government borrowing. And a conflict of interest arises there because if you are benefiting from borrowing, of course you'll be interested in borrowing more so that your company can make more money. So currently we have a crisis of our economy, an unsustainable debt, and high inflation. Inflation went up to 54%, it's now down to 23%, I think. And then also, like I said, the debt went up as a ratio of GDP to 104%, and is now at about 85%. We have a depreciating currency, which end of 2016 was at about 4 cedis and is currently at 17 cedis. And so everything is wrong with our economy. And the economy has linkages to everything. And so once the economy is not doing well, it affects healthcare, it affects education, it affects agriculture, it affects sports and every other sector. It affects the energy sector. Indeed, the energy sector is a ticking time bomb. We resolved Doomsaw. We introduced the energy sector levy to provide enough cash to be able to pay for our generation because the Doomsaw was caused by 2 things. 1, a generational shortfall, and 2, a legacy financial debt. And so introducing the ESLA, we made sure that more money was going to come in to be able to pay for generation. And then also, because we brought in Car Powership and also Ameri, we brought in almost 500 megawatts that solved the generational shortfall. So in 2016, I want to place it on record, and President Akufo-Addo should not misinform people again. In 2016, there was no load shedding. Nobody had load shedding. And so Doomsaw was solved long before he came into office. Again, he has sown the seeds of Doomsaw, and we're feeling it already. Our lights are being put off because the energy sector debt has ballooned to almost $2 billion. We negotiated the Millennium Challenge Compact, which was supposed to make our electricity distribution system more efficient. And part of it was to be applied for the PDS program, if you remember PDS. When they negotiated the PDS company to come and take over the downstream distribution of electricity, they used frontmen. And so the shares were initially given to the frontmen. And then when the president's family wanted to redistribute it to whoever they wanted or to themselves, the frontmen refused and they quarreled. And then that quarrel led to America withdrawing $190 million, which we were supposed to use for the electricity distribution system. And so since then, Electricity Company of Ghana's losses, technical and commercial losses, have gone up to 32%. There's no electricity company in this world that can survive with a 32% technical and commercial loss. That means they are unable to collect enough money. Apart from that, technical losses are things that you have to put in engineering to solve. But a big percentage of it is that you supply electricity, but you're unable to collect your money. And that's why we needed private sector intervention to improve the efficiency of collection. Because they quarreled, America took 190 million away. And so as I said, ECG is making huge losses. The last time I had 10 billion CD loss, another 6 billion CD loss. If we continue like this, our energy sector is going to crash. And so Akufo-Addo has sown the seeds for Dumsor again, and already Dumsor is here. Sunon Asogli has shut down because they owe them $270 million. They owe other operators who are threatening to shut down their power systems. And so, but for the fact that some of the power stations are reasonable, they are keeping the power system on even though the debt is mounting. Aside from that, ENI that supplies gas to us has reduced their supply of gas significantly because Ghana is not paying for the gas that it is taking. And so they've reduced the supply of gas significantly. When we set up the gas supply under ENI, we supported it with a World Bank guarantee. Because of non-payment, they have drawn down on the World Bank guarantee. They've drawn down until it's left with $50 million. If they draw down on that $50 million, then it means Ghana is in default to the World Bank, and the consequences will be very difficult. So they've put this country on the brink, and something must give. After such severe mismanagement of the country, I find it strange that they have the temerity to ask us to applaud them and to even vote for them again to come and continue the mess that they have caused. And I think that Ghanaians must know the full extent of what has happened. Nothing is working in this country. Everything has gone haywire. It has even affected the Black Stars. The Black Stars have always been the Black Stars. I mean, we've all been proud of the Black Stars. And you can count on them to score when it matters. Today, look at the Black Stars. So sad. You know, even Sudan, we're in the same group as Sudan. Sudan played all their home matches away because there's a war in Sudan. And Sudan has qualified. Black Stars is out. And so the time has come for Ghanaians to make a change. And I can smell the wind of change coming. I can tell that Ghanaians appreciate what we did when we were in government. A lot of propaganda made Ghanaians not know that we were managing things well. They said that life was hard. They were going to come and reduce electricity prices. They were going to come and reduce petrol prices. They were going to come and reduce the cost of food because they were going to grow so much food that, you know, the price of food will come down. Today is the reverse. The price of all these things have gone up. Petroleum has gone up, you know, currency is depreciating, you know. The price of Kenke has gone up, you know. Kenke used to be 50 pesos and 1 CD. Today it's 5 CDs and 7 CDs. And for a person like me, I probably might eat 2 balls or 3 balls. And so today if I eat 3 balls of Kenke, that's 15 CDs. And then 1 chinam is 20 CDs. So you're talking about 35, 40 CDs just to have a meal of Kenke. And so if a person has to have 3 square meals a day and you're spending 35 CDs on every meal, I mean, you can imagine what the, what do you call it, the minimum wages. Far less. I mean, there's no way. And that is a single individual, not to talk about a family. And so the time has come to make a change. NDC has a lot of programs, and in 20 minutes I cannot talk about all of them. But one of the major things is that we become a high-cost point for business, high-cost destination for business, because this government likes the easy way out. When you face a crisis like this, you must raise revenue and reduce expenditure. But they are raising revenue and raising expenditure. And so, I mean, you can see some of the waste and the things that they do. I mean, recently I heard that, but you're going out of government. How many days to leaving office? You're buying new Land Cruisers. For who? You know, But that is this government for you. The president, within a 9-month period, spent 69 million Ghana cedis on foreign travel. And so these are the kinds of things. We need to cut expenditure, but at the same time, we must reduce the taxes so that we become a favorable destination for investment. Today, foreign direct investment or businessmen who want to invest in West Africa are going to Cote d'Ivoire and to Benin instead of coming to Ghana. And that's why we're saying we'll scrap some of the levies, like e-levy. It's discouraged people from paying with their mobile money. They rather go and cash out and pay cash because they would avoid the 1.5% tax. And we told them this, they didn't listen. And so some of those taxes are things that we'll take out. The betting tax, I mean, there are no jobs, so the boys get a little money here and there from betting tax. Then you go and take 10% out of it. And so those ones too. COVID has come and gone. Why are you taxing us for COVID? We're the only country in this world that is still being taxed for COVID. And you know, the last scorecard I'll give you. Ghana has always been the second largest economy in West Africa. Today, we've lost that position to Cote d'Ivoire. In 2022, Cote d'Ivoire overtook us. And so we're now the third largest economy. And this is under the watch of Nana Akufo-Addo and the economic whiz kid, who was supposed to come and make our economy the best. Unfortunately, he's lost, any courage to talk about economy. It's only about digital. Digital is important. And I was Minister of Communications. We laid the groundwork for all the digital revolution that you're seeing. It was us who licensed the mobile companies. It was us who laid the fiber and all that. It was us who started the .gov platforms and all that. And so, yes, it's important. It facilitates production. It makes business easier to do. But you must get the fundamentals right. Your economy must work. You must manage your economy in such a way that those digital applications would add a bonus to what you're doing. But you cannot just say, I'm totally digital. You were not even trained as a digital person or a telecom. You were trained as an economist. And you were brought because you were coming to deal with the economy. So why have you suddenly shifted to a completely different professional orientation? And so these are things we need to look at. But we have the Women's Development Bank. I'm sure you've all heard about it. We have the National Apprenticeship Program. We have the 1 million coders program, which they plagiarized. It was in our 2020 manifesto. They put in their 2024 manifesto and tried to accuse us of plagiarizing it. We said, just go and look in our 2020 manifesto. It's there. Just that we didn't win power, so we couldn't implement it. We have the Mahama Cares. I don't know who put my name there, but it's a medical trust in which we want to put funds to help people with kidney, diabetes, cancers, and so on. The treatment is so expensive that I think that we must set up a system that helps people who are suffering from these lifestyle diseases to be able to have some relief. We have the free sanitary pad program for girls in secondary school and some of those in junior high school because they miss school because for 3, 4, 5 days because they don't have what it takes to be able to keep themselves well. We have the no fee stress program. It's a mouthful, but it's to cancel academic fees for fresh entrance into the university. And so in the first year, there are many cases where people qualify for university, but they are unable to take up their places because their parents cannot afford 3,700 cedis. Recently, I had to intervene with a girl who had to sit at home and help her mother sell roasted plantain because she could not afford to pay her first year admission fees into medical school. And so the girl is in school now in UDS, and we had to put some money together to assist her. And so it's something that will help a lot of people. We have the Bed for All program, that is hostels. Universities have huge tracts of land they are not using, and yet the private sector has money to invest in building hostels. And so we're going to take part of each university's land, and we're going to invite the private sector who can build hostels so that more students can get accommodation on campus instead of living off campus. We have free tertiary education for persons with disability, and they won't have to pay fees at all throughout their period in university. We're going to decentralize the senior high school feeding program so that the schools will directly procure their food, and we'll cancel the double track. We'll work to cancel the double track so that all our kids can go to school together. And then last but not the least, we have the Jumawura program. We want to assist 10,000 young people to own their own businesses, including poultry farms. That's why I said Nkukon Kiti, and then it's Nkukon Ma. We'll give them Nkukon Ma. I said Nkukon Kiti, and they're belittling it. But eventually I saw they also said incentivize youth to go into poultry production, and so it's the same thing. And then the last but not the least, Operation Recover All the Loot. Hold people accountable who have served in office. If you don't want to be held accountable, stay in the private sector, run your own business. You can spend our money anyhow, nobody cares. But if you accept public office, you must prepare to be held accountable. And we will hold this government accountable because we are the ones who can hold them accountable. The reason why they want their vice president to take over is so that they can, brush away all this money under the beds, dollars found under beds and things. They can just cover up everything. But the day of accountability must come. But we will not only hold them accountable, we'll hold ourselves to accountable. And so if we are taking action against people who have looted state lands and properties and things, or stolen public monies, our appointees should also expect that the same yardstick will be measured to them when they fall foul of public conduct. So let me leave it here, and I'm sure that in the conversation we can talk some more. I'll just advise in the election that we're going to hold that we should be wary of votes buying. I know that I've had reports that money bags have gone in and are trying to influence people with money to vote for them. Remember that you take that money, you spend it, and if you vote the wrong way and you have a government that is not able to run things, you suffer again for another 4 years. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency.
Thank you.
So what we're going to do is that we'll go for a quick break. When we return, just shortly, we'll have a sit down with him, and then we'll go through question and answers. Stay with us, we'll be right back.
Get a fly when you go around. I hear say the EC they register people for secret too. Add thousands of names to the register. I no go lie you. I hear say they do that for the EC headquarters. Oh yes, and they tell you that they add thousands of names to the ruling party in Stronghold, where they delete thousands of names for the opposition in Stronghold. I tell you.
If the rumors about the electoral commission be true, then this election will be free and fair.
Yeah, my thinking exactly.
This is the table of men.
So you left the women can't join the table. This is a hard guy.
Relax. The easy for come remove them off. By fire, by force.
Oh yeah,
they for come remove them off.
That one they for come because I'm sorry to disturb you. I couldn't help but overhear your concerns. So I beg.
All right, welcome back, and it's GBC's 2024 presidential encounter, and today our guest is former President John Dramani Mahama, who is contesting on the ticket of the NDC. You just heard him with his presentation, his plans for this country. We are live on GBC News. We are live on GTV. We are live on Obonu TV. We are live on UNIDEK FM in Accra, and then 17 other radio stations across the country. On Facebook is GTV Ghana. We're also live on Ghana Broadcasting Corporation on Facebook. On X is GTV Ghana. On YouTube is Ghana Broadcasting Corporation. This happens to be the biggest platform or media platform in Ghana. And wherever you're watching us, this is the Ghana Broadcasting Corporation, your Ghana Broadcasting Corporation. Your Excellency, once again, welcome.
Thank you, George.
And I hope you're well, though.
Yeah, I'm fine.
Okay. I have not forgotten. Today is your birthday. Happy birthday.
Thank you.
Okay. So how has the day been for you, celebrating your birthday?
Yeah,
Double six.
It's been quite filled with a lot of activity. In the morning, at 7 o'clock, pastors came from our church. Yeah, and we had like a prayer breakfast. And then after that, I have 3 orphanages that I support. And so I went to present some items to the orphanages. And then after that, I had an international guest, a head of state of another country. He came and asked to see me, so I met with him. And then after that, I went to this church, Second Chance, is it?
Okay, yes.
Philadelphia. Yeah.
Yes.
I went and spent some time with them.
Yeah.
And then I came back and then went to Action Faith, Duncan Williams, Impact. And then from Impact, I came directly here.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's been my day.
It's been a very eventful day.
Yeah, very, very eventful.
What's your birthday wish?
To win the election.
Okay.
Oh, okay. They know my wish.
Okay. All right. Usually my first question is about GBC.
Yeah.
And this is the public service broadcaster. And you talked about you being here before and all that. If you win, what's going to be your plan for GBC? We need serious funding.
Well, I have empathy for GBC because, like I said, I've worked here before. I worked as a young intern when I was doing my postgraduate in communication studies. And so I was here in 1986. Yeah, and after that I traveled for my postgraduate in social psychology. So I have an empathy for GBC. I believe that we must have a state broadcaster, we must have state media. I believe in competition between private media and state media because there are some things that the state media would carry not for profits. The private media is always looking at their bottom line, their financial bottom line, not so the state media. And that is why countries like Britain still have the BBC, which is state-funded. And so we must continue to have a state-funded public broadcaster. And so whatever assistance we can give, we'll see what we can do, of course, but with the kind of crisis and the mess we're coming to meet, it's going to limit how much, space is available to do a lot of things.
But it sounds a bit convenient for you to run away from the funding because of the crisis.
No, not exactly. I'm saying that we all are going to discover what is there. Because I even believe that what we're being told is not what it is. Because I see this government awarding huge last-minute contracts. I mean, huge contracts, road contracts and other contracts, signing all kinds of, agreements before they leave. And so we're going to find that the situation is probably much worse than you and I know. They state a certain arrears position, but it means that the new government is going to inherit an arrears position that probably is worse than we thought. That's why I said one of the first things we'll do in our first 90 days in office is to hold a national stakeholders conference, economic dialogue. And at that economic dialogue, we're going to open the books to Ghanaians, to let Ghanaians know exactly what the state of the economy is. Because I believe that once we are transparent with Ghanaians, they would be happy to come along for us to do the hard work that we need to bring the economy back on track.
Okay, great. You talked about our debt situation and how it has really increased. What's your plan to bring it down?
Our plan is to re-establish the sinking fund as quickly as possible. The sinking fund is a fund that you establish in which you put monies that are meant to retire any oncoming debt. And so our first thing would be to establish the sinking fund, and we'll look at the Petroleum Revenue Management Act again. It shows how petroleum revenues should be divided. You have the Heritage Fund, you have the Stabilization Fund, and then you have the annual budget funding amount. The annual budget funding amount, part of it, which is 70% of the total revenues, goes to GMPC. Now, if you look at the way GMPC has been spending money on useless things, I think that we must look at that again. We should just not give them that huge money and let them just keep it in the account and just use it for whatever they want. We must be able to set up an account into which the monies that are meant for GMPC are put. And as and when they need that money, the money is released to them. Because they've used it for non-core things instead of exactly for what they want. So what I was trying to say was that we need to look at the structure of that. And if there are any savings that we made in terms of, cutting down expenditure in that area, we should put it into a sinking fund. And that sinking fund should be used to address oncoming debt. Aside from that, we need to renegotiate the debt. We're not part of the debt negotiation. The debt exchange, we're not part of it. And so we didn't have anything to do with the profile that has emerged. But everybody will tell you that there's a problem with the debt profile. There are two humps, one in 2026, and then another one in 2027. The 2026 one, we're required to pay 182 billion cedis. You know how much the total budget, government budget is? It's just over 170 billion. So in 1 year, government is supposed to pay its whole budget to service a debt. It's not feasible. And so we believe that there should be a negotiation that flattens it and streamlines it. But those are discussions that we'll have to have, because with the IMF and all of them, we'll have to sit and look at what is realistic. I think we're in a hurry to get a deal. And so both the IMF and our government were just in a hurry to announce to the world that Ghana has been able to successfully renegotiate. But, this is not sustainable. 182 billion in 1 year when your total budget is just about 170. It doesn't make sense.
So you're going to have a renegotiation.
And then again, in 2027, we're supposed to pay $4.2 billion. It's going to be difficult to do that.
So you renegotiate with IMF too?
We're not saying we're throwing the program away or that we're renegotiating. We're going to show the difficulties in implementing the program. That's going to be a difficulty, because then it means that if we don't do that, in 2026 we have to declare another debt default. And that will even be more serious than the current situation in which we are.
So if you show the difficulty in what would be the way out? What would be your program?
Well, we'll sit with our partners. We'll sit with the World Bank, the IMF, the African Development Bank, and then see how we can together negotiate that curve, and we'll see. Right. Currently, this government has a debt moratorium, and when you speak with the IMF, they say, they have front-loaded the bailouts. 2/3 of the bailout money has been paid in 1.5 years of the program when we have a moratorium on payment of debts. And when we start paying debts next year, 2026, only 1/3 of the bailout money is left. I don't know how that was negotiated.
Okay. You talked about setting up the sinking fund, and one of the sources for the fund into the sinking fund is oil revenue.
Yeah.
Now, I'm looking at how sustainable our oil revenue is going to be, where there have been further projections that our reserves are actually dwindling, which obviously there will be challenges with the revenue. So how sustainable would that be into the sinking fund? Which other means of sustainable revenue can you actually get into the sinking fund? Our
oil resource is dwindling because this government has created an unfavorable environment for the people who have the technology to come and drill and produce. That's it. And so our production has fallen by 32%.
Yes.
And the point is, they are quarreling with all the companies in our upstream. ExxonMobil, they virtually messed up and ExxonMobil pulled out. ExxonMobil is one of the biggest giants. And when they come to drill, they have deep pockets. And so they can drill, even if it's a dry well, they'll drill again. And so when ExxonMobil comes into your oil space, it's a very exciting thing to have. I mean, ExxonMobil packed and left because, I mean, they were just being so petty. Regulations were, you know, just unfavorable. Talo, which is running the Jubilee field and the 10 field together with Cosmos, all of a sudden they get up and say, we've audited, you owe us $700 million. You must pay us immediately. I mean, and so Talo say, where's the $700 million coming from? We dispute it, we don't owe you. But you don't wait and come and surprise them with a $700 million bill. And so it's like, oh, you are just fishing. You just want, because the economy is in crisis, you want to extract $700 million out of us. Of course, it's under arbitration, and so we'll see how to sort it out. E&I had litigation with a Ghanaian company, Springfield. We gave Springfield that block, and Springfield made a discovery. And then they thought that the block was connected to the E&I block. And so when that happens, there's something you call unitization that you do. And so Springfield asked for unitization. And then E&I objected and said, no, you drilled only one well. You should drill some additional well to be able to prove that there is a connection between the blocks. I mean, that was just a petty disagreement. If I was president, would have resolved that. These guys left it. It went to court. The process went on, and the courts ruled that E&I should escrow 30% of their revenues. A big company like E&I, you say 30% of their revenues they should put aside, they shouldn't touch it until the case is disposed of. And when E&I refused to do it, they were cited for contempt. And so they were going to arrest the E&I top management. So what did they do? They bolted to Cote d'Ivoire, and then they moved their headquarters from here and moved it to Cote d'Ivoire. The money that they had brought to drill in 4 compartments that they have next to the current field that they have, they took that money to Cote d'Ivoire. And guess what? They discovered the Baleine field in Cote d'Ivoire, which is currently giving Cote d'Ivoire more gas and oil. And the 4 compartments that money was supposed to do in Ghana are lying fallow. So I'm going to go and find all those people. I'll hug them. I will cajole them. I will bring them back. I can charter a plane to go and bring them all back and tell them, please come and drill, you know. But it's easy. With most of those compartments, a lot of work has been done. And so bringing them on stream is not going to be very difficult. And so if we're able to do that, it will give us more gas, one, so that we can reduce the amount of crude oil we're using to produce energy, because we'll have more gas. If we have gas, it saves us a lot of money because crude oil is far more expensive. So that's the first savings we'll get. But aside from that, it will increase the revenue we get from oil and gas. And with that increased revenue, we can put some into the sinking fund.
A major source of revenue, I mean, this has been part of our economy for years, got to do with taxes, which usually is a low-hanging fruit. You are talking about cutting down taxes. You've outlined very interesting and big policies that you want to push along. How are you going to work through it, knowing very well that, number one, we are with the program, number two, you're cutting down on taxes, which means that you're not going to have enough revenue for that. As of now, as we speak, our oil is actually dwindling. We are not making that much compared to what we're making in the past. So how are you actually going to work around with that level of revenue that we have?
The economic wizard too says he's going to cut taxes. Didn't you hear him? He has a PhD in economics. He says he's going to cut taxes. Maybe you ask him that when he comes. But we are going to cut taxes based on tax rationalization.
Okay.
I did economics up to sixth form. I didn't do it in university. But I know that the more taxes you slap on people, the less compliance you have. And so for every new tax you add on, there's what we call diminishing marginal returns. And so if you slap on a new tax, people will find a way of evading it. If the taxes are easy, transparent, fair, people are more encouraged to pay. And we've reached the stage where for every new tax that we put on, people are evading those taxes. The value, Ghana has one of the highest VATs in the world. If you take VAT itself, Get Fund, NHIL, COVID levy, what, those are all indirect value-added taxes. We're almost at 22%, the highest in Africa. And so if you continue to just pile on the taxes like that, then you're going to have more evasion. But if you rationalize and make it fair, for instance, you go to the market and the taxes have become distorted, because if you look at the VAT, there are some people paying some 3% flat rate, the others paying some 21%. They're all in the same market. Their stores are next to each other. You're telling this one, charge 3%, and asking this one to charge this amount. I mean, you think that the one you're asking to pay that will issue VAT receipts? He won't. He will sell and evade the tax. I mean, you go to restaurants and things, and people go and eat. They don't insist on collecting their VAT receipts and all that. And so if you rationalize and make the taxes more transparent and fair, people would be more willing to pay. We always talk about bringing more people into the tax net. Why is that not working? I mean, we have many people who are earning incomes that are not paying. Not that they're in the informal sector, but it's just that we have not found a way of being able to identify them and let them pay taxes. For instance, let's assume that an auto mechanic comes and works on my car. He charges me 2,000 cedis. I give him 2,000 cedis. What tax does he pay on the 2,000? Let's say my air conditioner breaks down in my house. Somebody comes and fixes it. I pay 1,500. What tax does he pay on it? Let's say my mason comes and does some renovation in my house. I pay him 50,000 cedis. What tax does he pay on it? Until we're able to get everybody to pay a little. So for that 1,000 cedis, you know, if he paid even 50 cedis, I mean, multiply it by all the hundreds of thousands of people who are working in that sector, we'll be able to bring on a lot of money. We're not collecting our property taxes properly. The other time they wanted to auction my father's house. They went and put a court order on it because we hadn't paid property tax. But we hadn't received any property tax bill for a long time. And so suddenly they said that you owe 3 years property tax, and so you must report at somewhere, a billing pay court or something like that. And so we had to now go and look for where the office was, and the office was in some back corner somewhere, you know, and then I had to go and pay so that they won't, you know, auction my father's house. He said, "Go by the bills again." For the bills. I should go for the bills. Anyway,
I'll be moving over to Doreen and have some questions from our audience here. But just one quick question on education. I have one on health and then social inclusion, but I'll just start with education, then hand over to Doreen. Then, usually when education comes to mind, the first thing has got to do with free senior high school. And but before free senior high school, what will be your plan for the primary, of course, kindergarten too, before then junior high school? Then we'll go to the free senior high school and briefly touch on the no fees stress. There's been an issue concerning targeting. Why don't you target rather than just making it broad for everyone?
Okay, you know, I feel sad about our basic education. It's falling apart because there's more political advantage to be had from secondary. Because in the primary, we already have the free compulsory universal basic education, F-cube. And we're supposed to pay capitation grants. We have the school feeding system. We also have the removal of schools under trees, which was a policy under our government. Now, attention has all shifted to secondary education, the free SHS. That it is starving the basic schools of funding. And so learning in the basic schools quality is going down. And so we need to look at it. I mean, children are not getting textbooks to be able to study. And so children go and sit in class and they don't have any textbooks. But the worst thing is they don't even have desks to sit on. I think, I don't know if it's Ed Trust or one of these CSOs in the education space, came up with their research and said 1.3 million Ghanaian children do not have chairs and desks to sit on. EduWatch, yeah. They either sit on the floor or they lie on their stomachs to write. That is a serious indictment on us. And that's why when we're in office, we're doing the removal of schools and the trees. The building of the school blocks came with furniture. And so we're doing quite a lot in that space. We made sure that the children had all the 4 core textbooks that they needed for study. And so I think basic education was thriving.
Okay.
Now there's complete attention on free SHS. And so basic education is beginning to suffer. And so one of the things we need to do is to pay attention to that place. But we should be able to do that by creating more efficiency in the free SHS space.
Okay.
One major problem is there's no dedicated funding for free SHS. And so it's subject to the hazards of the budget. And so many times the headmasters have to threaten to send the children home. Alumni have to scrounge around, contribute and buy rice and mackerel and go and donate to the school for them to be able to continue. And it's because the whole system is very inefficient. This centralized feeding system where food suppliers have to supply to buffer stock and buffer stock supplies to the schools and the money is paid to buffer stock. So we've said that we're going to decentralize it and go back to the system we had where the monies were paid to the schools. They have matrons, they have bursars. The other time when I was saying, somebody said, why would the headmaster leave his job and go to the market? I didn't say the headmaster should go to the market and go and buy food for children. They have bursars, they have matrons whose responsibility it is to do that. And so they would go to the market, we'll give them the criteria. The criteria is that buy made in Ghana, don't buy any foreign made food. And come and feed the children. And in the local market, they'll get yam, they'll get maize, they'll get cassava, they'll get locally made rice and all that. And so we'll change some of that with the no stress fee policy. The important thing is to make sure that every child who qualifies for university is able to take their place. And so eventually we'll get to a point where we do our social profiling so well that we're able to determine who needs it and who doesn't need it. Right now, we don't have any such social profiling. And that's why when we started the free SHS, eventually when we're going to come to the boarding students and all that, our thinking was to use a bursary system which will be administered through their district assemblies, because then the district assembly can do the profiling at the district level to know which family deserves it and who doesn't deserve it. But unfortunately, it was issued in a blanket manner. It would take some time for us to gather data about the children, their backgrounds and all that, you know, but now that we're registering the children, if they have the Ghana card and all that, you can see what job the father does, what the mother does and all that, and be able to tell. But for now, it's been introduced as a blanket system. We'll continue to use that until such a point where we get to be able to know that John Mahama's son does not need to get it free, because I can afford to pay not only for my son, but for many other children.
Okay, all right. I'll move on to Doreen now. We'll pick some questions from our audience here in the studio. Yes, Doreen.
Thank you so much for this opportunity. And we are at my favorite part of the conversation, where I give the power back to our audience to ask all the relevant questions they want. So the protocol is that if you have any questions, you just signal me. I'll bring the microphone to you. You mention your name, where you're coming from, and then you go ahead with your question. Now, I'll start by asking my question as usual. Your Excellency, one of your major campaign promises has been the 24-hour economy. Now, that's one job, 3 people, 3 shifts. Now, today on social media, I'm hearing that you said that this is going to be voluntary. On that aside, the question is, do we have the financial resources to go ahead with this policy, considering governments past and present, their complaints on the wage bill? And also, I want to know, when exactly do you think that you can start implementing that policy? I've read that you are saying it's gradual, but when can we say that, yes, this policy is starting? Please hold on to that question for me. I'll take 2 more questions. I'll come back to you for a response.
Please, we want to continue with education. Education.
Okay.
Thank you very much. I come from Nagrat.
Okay.
So the first issue is considering the narrative that Your Excellency, you have.
You didn't tell us your name?
I'm Michael.
Michael, good.
Nagrat.
All right.
Considering, Your Excellency, the narrative you've made in the education, the economy, about the economy, what will be your agent strategy in terms of funding the free senior high school? Because you've spoken about what you will do, but how will we get the funding? Especially doing away with the double track.
Okay.
In your manifesto, you also spoke about integrating the free senior high school secretariat into GES. How about the senior high school coordinators in the respective regional and district offices?
Okay. Michael, thank you very much.
Please, for want of time, we'll restrict ourselves to one question because we have lots of organizations here. We want to make sure that everyone gets the opportunity to ask their questions. So please, if you get the microphone, please just ask one question. I think Your Excellency has 3 questions now. So
let's pick the lady's own, and after that, he can actually respond to it. Yes.
Thank you very much. My name is Dr. Harriet Annan, Nagrat. Still on education. Nagrat once had a tax waiver on vehicles, which was withdrawn. Will your government consider restoring that to enable Nagrat to acquire vehicles for our teachers?
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. So, Your Excellency, Doreen's 24-hour question, wage bill, when you're going to start, and that conversation on social media that you're saying is voluntary.
Yeah, well, it's voluntary because we're not going to hold a gun to the heads of industries and business and say, come and register with the 24-hour policy. It's going to be voluntary because we're going to roll out the policy and show how you will benefit if you sign on to the policy. And so that's why we say it's voluntary. When I was president, I assisted the pharmaceutical industries with a loan of 50 million Ghana cedis. And you'll be surprised what it did. It made them expand their production lines.
Yeah.
And that made Ghana pharmaceutical companies begin to export more to our neighboring countries, to Sierra Leone, Liberia, to Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger, you know. And so there are incentives that government can give to companies in order that they are able to add on. And so, for instance, we have the Ghana Exim. And so if we say companies that sign on for the 24-hour economy policy would be eligible for Exim financing in order to increase production so that they can take on more employees. That's a good way. If we give them some tax reliefs in order that they're able to bring down their production cost and thereby reinvest in expanding production, that's another way. We must also take advantage of the increased demand that we can have by using the ECOWAS Trade Liberalization Scheme and the African Continental Free Trade Area. I don't know what the current figure is, but the last that I checked, Ghana had registered 77 products. Some countries have registered 200 and over products, 300 products. So we must increase our products that are eligible for trading tariff-free to other African countries. We must bring in industries that are labor-intensive, that have opportunities to export tariff-free into the European and American markets. You know, we have the African Growth and Opportunities Act. And so we can export tariff-free into the American market. And one area that will be very good for 24-hour economy is the textiles industry. You should go to Bangladesh and other places and see the textile industry. It employs thousands of people and they work, like I'm saying, 3 shifts because the orders are there, they have to keep exporting. And so even in agro-industry, you know, my father was a rice farmer. We had the biggest rice mill in the country, produced most of the rice that was eaten in Ghana. And I worked holidays in my father's factory. And I used to go on night shift like any worker, and day shift like any worker. And I used to work so that I'll get some money when I'm going to school. I was paid like a laborer, that's the lowest wage. But I mean, when I earned that money and I went to school, I was the richest student in school. So it is possible. And the point is, we are not inventing 24-hour economy. 24-hour economy, just Google it and see the number of countries that are engaged in 24-hour economy.
Okay.
We need to roll out the policy, indicate what incentives the businesses will get if they enroll, and then I'm sure that they will take it and run with it. We intend to roll out the policy within 120 days of coming into office. It's in our manifesto that within 120 days we will outline the policy for the 24-hour economy, so people will know exactly what is in it for them. It covers the service sector, it covers the tourism sector, it covers the manufacturing sector, agribusiness sector, you know.
And the public sector.
And the public sector.
So then wage bills also comes in.
Yeah, but it will be productive. If your port is running 24 hours, are they not clearing the same containers? They're just clearing them faster, that's all. And people are paying for the containers anyway. You understand? And the point is, if we put on more customs officers, you understand, yes, we have to pay them more, but they're being productive. It's not like they're just going to sit and do nothing and you're paying them for nothing.
Okay. Then Michael from NAGRAT, funding for the free senior high school.
That's why we say we'll have the National Stakeholders Conference Dialogue on Education. I've said it, and when I said we'll do that to review the free SHS, I mean, lawyers that I expect should understand the word review, you know, came out and said it means abolish. I mean, it's only in Ghanaian politics that, you know, people can be so hypocritical, or, I mean, just to gain political points, you say review means abolish, you know. We've reached, for everything, a stage comes when you must review. For instance, the National Health Insurance scheme had been operational for so many years, and so, you know, we've done a review of the National Health Insurance scheme. The report is there. As president, it was presented to me, and it showed what we should do for it to be sustainable and to be able to last into the future. So for every program that you do, at a point you must review and see if it's working well, where are the lapses so that you can cure them, so that that program can continue.
Okay.
And so funding is one of the things that we're going to discuss, because without a dedicated funding source, it is difficult to sustain the program. And that's why we're saying we'll hold a national stakeholders forum. NAGRAT will be there, NAT will be there, the parents will be there. We've done it before. Ask them, NAGRAT and Co. We held an education forum when Spio Gabriel was the minister. That is how come Get Fund came. And we agreed that, look, we're going to put a VAT of 2.5% to fund educational infrastructure. And that has been one of the most successful, you know, instruments for providing educational infrastructure in the history of Ghana. In every school in Ghana, you find Get Fund projects. It's only that this government has gone to mortgage it. They've taken the money in advance and spent it. And so 60% of the money has been spent in advance. And that's why you go to all the schools and all those dining halls and administration blocks have been abandoned, because Get Fund cannot pay the contractors. And that is because this government has taken it and spent it on a few STEM schools. How many Ghanaian children are going to have the opportunity to go to those STEM schools? And yet, if we built more laboratories, more dormitories and all that, we could ease the congestion in the schools. If we continue the community day schools, we could ease the congestion in the schools and get rid of double track. It is because all those projects have come to a standstill while we're implementing free SHS. That's why there is that congestion, because of the number of children who have come into the school system.
Okay.
And that's why we had argued for a progressive implementation of free SHS. Our colleagues wanted it at once. And so the downside that we're experiencing is part of the hasty implementation. And so we all need to come together, sit and,
But
decide.
now we've gone beyond the progressive because there's full implementation now.
Yeah. So we all need to sit and look at what the lapses are and see how we can cure those lapses going forward.
About the senior high school coordinators.
We want to cut waste. This government is very good at duplicating and creating new offices and things just to create offices, jobs for the boys. The GES has the mandate and authority to supervise the educational sector. And so I don't see why you would have a standalone free SHS secretariat. And I hear that the rot that is going on there, the corruption that is going on there, I think it's time to just bring it back to GES and let GES pretend over that.
But will you include that
the senior high school coordinators will still be senior high school coordinators, but they will be supervised by GES.
Okay. And then Dr. Ann, tax waiver on vehicles.
The tax waiver on vehicles was cancelled because it was being abused. People were given exemptions and they purchased cars, which in some cases they connived with car dealers and sold the car and took the money. And so that's why it was scrapped. That's the reason why it was scrapped. We need to sit and find a way we can implement it without that kind of abuse. And so we're willing to sit with NAGRAT and NAT and all that and see how we can implement it together. And so once we do that, if we're in agreement, then I think that we should be able to look at it.
Okay, let's pick the next set, Doreen.
Okay. We'll pick, please hold on, we'll pick one from this side and then we'll come to you.
Thank you, Mr. President. My name is Matthew Kubacha. I'm the president for the Ghana National Association of the Deaf. My question for you today is that currently in Ghana, there is only one senior high school for the deaf, which is in Mampong. So just imagine all the deaf people across Ghana coming all the way after completing a junior high school to Mampong. What plans do you have for the deaf community? Are you going to build senior high schools for them in the northern region and in other regions so that they wouldn't have to come all the way to Mampong just to have access to senior high school? Also, in Ghana, ever since the Disability Act was implemented, was established, we don't see the implementation. The quotas for persons with disability to work, as to when it comes to their common fund and all those things, it's not being implemented well. What is your plan for persons with disability when you become president? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And again, one question, please.
All right, thank you very much, Your Excellency. My name is Jacob Anderson. I represent UTAG. When you were mentioning the list of educational associations that you were going to consider for the tax waiver, you didn't mention UTAG. Yeah, but back to my question. So prior to 2016, the campaign was, to take away the teachers and nursing allowances that you were giving to them so that they can fall on, the student loan. I thought that was laudable. But then the free, no stress, no stress, how do you call it? No fee stress. I see a lot of contradiction. Comparing what you wanted to do for the teachers, trainees, what you wanted to do for the nursing trainees. I thought, bringing them on the student loan was laudable. It was going to save us a lot of money to do other things. Now you are bringing in no fee stress. Again, especially when we have also criticized the free SHS, the way it has been implemented. How do you, reconcile all of that? Thank you.
And then the third one.
Hello, Your Excellency. My name is my name is Espoir, student at UNIMAC IJBA. I'm representing Youth and Rec, that's Youth in Natural Resources and Environmental Governance. So I'm interested in the environment. I was waiting for you to mention something about LI 2462 or Galamsey, but you didn't mention it. So the last time I was having a conversation with a friend, and he mentioned that passing the LI 246 is not something that we should blame only in NPP for, because currently we have 137 in the parliament. And according to the constitution, that's Article 104, parliament needs like 1/2 of all members, and 1/2 should be 138 to make a decision. So if NPP has 137 and then NDC has 137, someone might say because of the independent candidate who decides to do business with NPP, that person voted. But we all know that NDC people also voted to pass that law. So would you agree that NDC is part of passing LI 246, or you'd solely blame NPP for passing that law? And you didn't say anything about Galamsey, so I'd like to know what you would do about that. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay. We'll start with Matthew about the senior high school for the deaf. There's only one in the country.
Yeah, they are inadequate, but I do think there are more than one. There's another one in Savlugu for the northern sector. Yeah, but I do think that we need much more. We need to look at the census and see what the population that need that special education is, so that then we can make provision for. But I do believe that it's inadequate, because for a long time, those are the two schools that I know cater for that disability. And so it's something that we'll look at, and maybe if we need to build 1 or 2 more of such schools, we'll do that. But it's not just building the school, it's getting the teachers and instructors who are able to work, in those schools. So it's something that we need to look at.
Okay, implementation of the Disability Act.
Yeah. The implementation of the Disability Act, I agree, has been very lax. Because I remember that even in the Act, by a certain year, all public buildings or any building into which the public goes, it can be a privately owned, must have facilities for persons with disability to be able to access. Of course, when the bill was being passed, it was argued that it will cost a lot of money to be able to do that, because in some places you had to break the building, put in a lift so that people could use the lift. In other areas you had to open areas where you could put a ramp to be able to access. And so I don't think it's been enforced the way it should. I see new buildings coming up have ramps, and some have, lifts, elevators. The problem with a lot of the old buildings, not much has been done to improve access, and so that's something that we need to advert our minds to. And so that's I agree with him.
And then Jacob,
we should look at it. He also talked about the common fund. The persons with disability are supposed to receive 3% of the common fund. Now, what this government has done is that when we're in government, the constitution says that the district assembly's common fund will be between 5% and 8% of total government revenue. At the time we were in office, we had pushed the payment of the district assembly's common fund to 7.5%. It was just 0.5% short of the ceiling. Now, what this government has done when they came into office was reduce from 7.5% to 5% to the minimum. And then in addition to reducing it to the barest minimum, they introduced what they call the capping and realignment law. And so they capped the fund. And so if the fund accumulated money above a certain percentage of the budget, the extra money went into the consolidated fund. And so that has affected the 3% that they are entitled to. Aside from that, the District Assembly Common Fund doesn't go, because they're spending it all here in Accra. They do all the procurement here instead of sending the money to the assemblies. And so the assemblies are there, they call them, come and take wheelbarrows. They've done the procurement in Accra. Hey, we bought you dustbins, come and take them. I mean, who says the assemblies can buy their own dustbins or their own wheelbarrows? But that's this government for you. Okay. And so because of that, the persons with disability are not getting their money, because the little money that comes, there are some, the DC considers that there are other pressing things other than paying the money to the persons with disability. So that is one of the problems.
And then, Jacob, the contradiction. The contradiction between the no fee stress and then...
No, but UTAG, I didn't mention your name because it wasn't you, it's Nagra that asked. That's why. I used
You can note that down.
Yes, I'll take note of it. Yeah. You know, we were moving, colleges of teacher training colleges had been elevated to tertiary institutions, and they were training teachers. Other universities were training teachers. Cape Coast was training teachers. You know, Winneba is training teachers. You understand? But if a teacher was trained in a college of education, he got an allowance. But if he's trained in University of Education, Winneba, he didn't get an allowance. And so we said for uniformity, everybody should take the student loan, because that's what the other students get in the other public universities. So that was the case. In the case of the nurses, we said they should also move on to the student loan. But then we realized that the law did not allow them to be qualified to receive the student loan. So we said, okay, we're going to amend the law. And then when we amend the law, we'll bring you onto the student loan scheme. But in the meantime, we'll give you an abated allowance. And so we started to pay the abated allowance. Indeed, we paid it in 2016, about the second half. We started paying before we left office. But then, of course, this government said that they were going to be able to pay. And so they took political advantage of that and restored it. And unfortunately, I mean, it was just a political gimmick, because in some cases they owe 30 months of nursing trainee allowances. I mean, there are some nursing trainees who have gone from first year to fourth year without receiving their allowance. And so it really, the last time they were asked, they said, well, delayed allowance is better than no allowance. I mean, what kind of logic is that? You know, but there's no contradiction. You know, what's going to happen is the first year no academic fee stress is going to be administered by the student loan scheme, but it will be administered as a grant instead of a loan for the first year, because it takes time to process the students for the student loan scheme. So normally by the time they're supposed to pay that registration fee, that will, the academic fees that will allow them to take their place in school, they haven't been put on the student loan yet. And that's the stress we want to take away. I give the example of the girl who was roasting plantain with her mother. Yeah. I had to intervene. I called the mother and the daughter and I gave them some support. But, I mean, that was a real life case of a brilliant girl who, because of 3,700 CDs, could not take her place in school because she was supposed to pay before she goes and takes her place. You know, and there are other things they have to pay. They have to pay hostel fees and so many other fees. And so at least if you're able to sort out this one to do with the academic fees, they will be able to take their place. Then you process them so that by the time they get to second year, they are registered with the student loan and they can take the loan to pay. And that's why we say we're going to introduce the student loan plus, which will be an enhanced student loan that makes the money enough for them to be able to cater for their education. And the thing about the student loan is they will start to pay when they get a job. So once they get a job, it starts to be subtracted from their salaries until they finish paying.
On LI 2462, whether you accept that NDC members of parliament should also take the blame for the passage of that law?
Not really, because he doesn't understand how parliament works. LIs are laid And when LIs are laid, you can comment on them, but you cannot amend or change the LI. The only person who can withdraw an LI is the minister. And so it's laid for 21 sitting days, and it becomes law. And so you don't vote on LIs. You know, you can debate the LI, but you have no power as an MP to withdraw an LI. It's only the minister who can withdraw it. And so there's a restriction on what MPs can do, especially on our side, when it comes as a legislative instrument. And so you cannot blame our side for its passage. I think that this government should not have passed it in the first place. We were in government. We did not pass such an LI because our forests are sacred. I mean, and you can see what's happening already. And they deliberately passed this LI because their people were just waiting to invade the forest. They actually had started invading the forest reserves. So the LI was passed to give legitimacy to what they were doing. I mean, the people who were even supposed to give the permits had their own companies that they gave permits to work in the forest reserves. I mean, when somebody died who gave parts of forest reserves forever and ever to his successors and things, that's what they were doing. That's why they passed that LI, to legitimize the things that they were doing. Okay. It's only the power of CSOs and the Ghanaian people that has woken them up, and they have agreed that they were going to withdraw that LI. Unfortunately, because of the quarrel between Parliament and the Supreme Court, Parliament has not been able to sit. I hope that Parliament will sit after the election, by which time we would have a clear majority for the next Parliament.
Okay.
And
of which you supported the NDC side not to honor that recall.
I think it was a useless recall. It was just going to be a waste of the public funds.
It was to help governments run it.
It was going to be a waste of the public funds. There was a recall before. You know how much it costs to recall Parliament? It's millions of cedis. And the minority side refused to come.
Who is the minority side?
The MPP.
Okay, all right. He said you've not said anything about Galamsey. Briefly on Galamsey, then we can move to the next set of questions.
Yeah, Galamsey, you know, small-scale mining is not illegal. And we've had small-scale mining for years. Except that most of it was artisanal mining. And it did not cause too much harm to the environment because the boys mostly use wheelbarrows, shovels, and pickaxes and things like that. It actually started to boom, and the destruction of the environment became much more serious when they started using earth-moving equipment, excavators and bulldozers and things. The destruction one excavator can do in 1 month, you'll be shocked. And so a lot of it was brought in when the Chinese came in with what they call the Shanfan machine. And so in collaboration with their Ghanaian partners, there were Ghanaians who promoted it. They took concessions and settled, you know, different mining groups on different places. So when I came, I met a situation where, you know, you could see. There was one day, I flew in the helicopter. I remember I said somewhere was the headquarters of Galamsey, and they almost ate me up. Because what you see from the ground, it won't panic you like when you see it from the air. The destruction is terrible. And so this has continued to happen. But let me tell you, George, small-scale mining is done in America. In Canada, there's small-scale mining. In many places, there's small-scale mining. It is how you do it. It is not illegal. It's in our minerals law. Small-scale mining is one of the sectors in our gold mining law. But how you do it is the issue. They have the technology for doing it responsibly. Here, we are not enforcing what they need to do it responsibly. If you go to America and they map out an area, they've done exploration, they know where the gold is. They map it up. They bring the machines. The first thing they do is they do what they call a leach pad or a leach dam. It's a big dam. They excavate it, and then they line it with polythene. Line it with polythene. Then they construct a course to bring water into it, and then they start mining the gold, and then washing the gold, extracting the gold, and then all the dirty water and the toxic water goes into the leach pad. Because you've lined it with plastic, it doesn't seep into the ground. Now, when you finish the mining, they have some chemicals that you put into the water, or sometimes they use microbes. There are some microbes that eat toxins. They eat toxins and eat dirt. And so you put it into the water. It would clean that water. You can even take a cup and drink it. And then when they have done that, they discharge the water into the environment. Then they use the machines and flatten the ground. There's a certain compost material. You spray it on all the ground. You plant trees. You come back in 5 years. You won't believe that any mining took place.
You sound very conversant in this.
Well, I've studied. I've researched it. I didn't do mining, but I've researched it. I mean, you need to. Okay, somebody has reminded me that my brother is a miner. Yeah, that's true. I've been to his mining site before, so I see some of what they do. And so we just need to train these small-scale mining companies. If this is your concession, there are people who can train you. We have the University of Mines and Technology, train you how to do the mining properly. And there are young people who are graduating every year who have that knowledge that we can attach to these small-scale mining companies to give them jobs anyway, and to supervise and make sure that they do things the right way.
Okay.
And so there are things that we need to introduce a reclamation bond for small-scale mines. We have it for the large-scale mines, but we don't have it for the small-scale mines. The large-scale mines, as they work, they put some money aside. And when they finish, they have to reclaim the land, and when they do, that money is paid to them.
Okay.
If they don't reclaim the land, then the money that they put aside is paid to a company, a reclamation company, to come and reclaim the land. We need to introduce it for small-scale mining concessions too.
Okay. But just a quick one. Are you equating small-scale mining to galamsey?
No, they are different.
Okay.
And that's why people make a different... people
because you said much about small-scale mining.
Yeah, people confuse
galamsey itself
and small-scale mining. Yeah. Galamsey is illegal mining. You know, when you just take machines and then go somewhere, they say there's gold there, you go and you just start digging, you know, and just destroying the environment. We have to audit the small-scale mining concessions and find out who is the concession owner. And you must hold the concession owner responsible for any illegal mining that takes place on his concession.
Okay.
If he's unable to prevent people from doing illegal mining on his concession, you take it away from him.
Okay.
But on the other hand, too, some of these big mining companies, they take huge concessions, 40 miles square. They do the prospecting, they can see the gold is here, and it's more than 1 gram per ton. Here is 0.5 grams or 0.3. He's not interested in that part. But a small-scale miner can recover that 0.3 profitably. And so one of the things we'll do is to get the big mining companies and get them to seed parts of the land where they think that the grammage of gold is not worth their while.
Okay.
So that we can put small-scale mining companies there, help them to establish proper, responsible mining, and be able to produce gold for this country.
Because of time, we'll take our final stretch of questions, then you can wrap up on that.
We'll take our last batch of questions. Please, as I said earlier, keep it short.
All too soon.
Just one question.
You want us to stay further?
No. I'm traveling tomorrow. I have to go and...
All right. Final set of questions, that we can wrap up on that.
Thank you. My name is Nade Anokwafo the First, Adabranka Market Queen, from Greater Accra Market Association. Please, what is your plans for the single parents, the elderly men, women, children on the street nationwide, begging for their daily bread, and especially the Ghanaian market women? Thank you.
Please go ahead with your question.
Thank you, Ms. Doreen. My name is Salma, a student at UNIDEK Institute of Journalism, and I'm here representing youth in natural resource and environmental governance. Your Excellency, in your manifesto, you mentioned that you will leverage, when you are voted to power come December 7, you will leverage on green technologies to ensure or promote, to ensure or create jobs in the country. So my question is, when you come to power, how are you going to make sure that climate change, biodiversity, energy transition, and all these green technologies are environmentally sustainable and also economically beneficial to everybody, including people with disability? Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Salma.
We have another lady at the back.
Thank you. My name is Mawina Azuma from the Youth Bridge Foundation. My name is Mawina from the Youth Bridge Foundation. Now, in 2016, we published a policy brief that advised the decoupling of the Ministry of Youth and Sports, and which you have also mentioned that you are going to do if voted into power. So we align with that, and then we commend that. But we're also looking at, we want to know what motivated the decision by your party to decouple, and then what the agenda of the ministry is going to be. While we are at it, can we please consider can you tell us how young people are going to be included in the implementation of your policies, especially considering the various demographics of young people that we have, young people living with disabilities, out of school youth? Thank you.
Okay, so our last question. We have too many questions. One question, last one.
Actually, you did made a very cogent point by touching on the Black Stars' performance in recent times, which we all believe they are not doing very well, because we went to Abidjan and they put out that abysmal performance. Going forward, we thought they're going to learn and do something different. We lost this AFCON qualifiers again. We have another chance to play to qualify to the World Cup. I know how optimistic you are that you win these elections, which I wish you all the best. If you get the opportunity, what are the measures that you're going to put in place so that we can qualify to this World Cup? Because this is a very, very destiny changer for many Ghanaians. So what measures are you going to put in place? Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. So we are done.
Okay, all right. Okay, thank you. All right. That's all. So we'll start with plans for single parents, children on the streets, and then market women.
I think that the issue of single mothers, street children, and all that is an issue of the breakdown of society, the increased cost of living, and the lack of adequate social protection is what is creating a lot of this problem. The social welfare department is not well resourced to be able to deal with the issue of street children. And so I know that the Catholic Church is doing a lot of work in that. They have day shelters and things like that where the children go and they're giving a meal and all that. I think that we should expand that program. We also have the Livelihood Against Poverty program, LEAP, which President Kufuor introduced, and then we expanded. I don't know what has happened, but I hear that the money is not being released in many cases and all that, and so it defeats the purpose of the program. We introduced mobile money. We gave every beneficiary a mobile phone, and every month we loaded their money onto the phone. Unfortunately, I hear that the money is not regular now, so as a result of the crisis in the economy, it has affected everything. But that was the way of reaching really poor and indigent families, so that at least you could provide food for the family, provide national health insurance for healthcare while the child goes to school, under FQ, where they receive one hot meal a day, so at least the child is getting some nutrition. So that is, if that is working well, it should be able to assist, ameliorate the difficulties that these children have. With regard to single mothers and Ghanaian market women and all that, I think that there are two things. One, the market enhancement program would assist our mothers and sisters who work in the markets, because we're going to identify some markets and we're going to reconstruct them so that they are it's appetizing to go there and buy something. If you go to a market where it rains and, I mean, you are a nice young lady and you go and you're walking in the mud, and by the time you come home, your skirt is all muddy. Who wants to go to a market like that? And so building up some of those markets, and we have a track record for doing it. We did the KJTR markets, Asawasi market, New Abrim market. I can name so many of them. And today, if you go, the environment is good for people to go and shop. So in our manifesto, we talk about the market enhancement program, which we believe would assist Ghanaian market women. Aside from that, the Women's Development Bank would put its branches in areas where women do business. And so in these markets that we reconstruct, we're going to have a bank, and that bank will be the Women's Development Bank. And so our mothers and sisters, when they have done the day sales, can go and deposit it in the bank. And then when they need assistance, because the bank is in the market, they know their shops, they know what they sell and all that, they can go and get small loans to put in their business, and then they pay at low interest, no collateral. And so we want to help 200,000 women a year. We expect that in 5 years, we would have covered 1 million women. And so we want to cover at least 200,000 women a year, giving them small loans and all that.
Okay. Salma, green technology and climate change, having environmentally sustainable programs.
Yeah. We have no choice but to, one, adopt green technologies and to adapt to climate change. I think that one of the basic issues to do with climate change in our area is the loss of biodiversity. In these last 8 years, the Forestry Commission has said that 37 of our forest reserves have been decimated. And so you can understand the extent of loss of biodiversity that has taken place. We need to claw back as quickly as possible. And so one of the things that we can do is there are a lot of green climate funds all over the world that you can access. And we have a lot of young people who have no work to do. And so we can tap, especially into afforestation, restoring the reserves back to what they were, and also planting fast-growing trees. And so that will help to employ young people. You give them Wellington boots, you give them tricycles, you put polytanks in the tricycles, you give them the seedlings, they plant. So you're doing tree growing instead of tree planting. And they're going to go during the dry season and water those trees so that we make sure that the trees, are able to survive. And so some of those things are areas that we must look at. But when it comes to energy sustainability, then we need to look at solar, because God blessed us with so much sunshine. And it's a shame that we're not doing more with the sunshine than we are. So looking at how we can take off some of the taxes of solar equipment so that people can put rooftop solar and all that. I have a rooftop solar system which is estimated to save me 47% on my energy consumption.
Okay.
It's quite a big system. And so in the daytime, from about 8 o'clock when the sun is fully out, my solar engineer tells me that I should turn on all the air conditioners in the house, because the house is running almost 100% on solar till about 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock. So he says, feel free to use your air conditioners during the daytime because your ECG consumption is virtually zero. So it's something that we can do, help people to acquire household solar. All these small barbering salons and hairdressers and all that. My barber, I sponsored a solar system for him. And so during the daytime when the sun is out, he switches off the ECG. And then the solar runs his cutters, runs his air condition. He's got a TV set, he's got a small fridge, and he runs on it until the solar goes down, the batteries kick in, and then when the batteries are getting exhausted, he turns on the ECG. So his prepaid card contains plenty credit. He's not using as much as he used to use. When I was president, we rolled out that program. Energy Commission tried it as a pilot, and it was very successful. But we didn't continue in office, and I think the new government didn't have access to the records, so they haven't continued it.
All right. Mawina, the reasoning behind decoupling youth and sports, and then what role are young people going to play in your policy implementation?
We realize that the Ministry of Youth and Sports, as is currently configured, is a ministry of the Black Stars. That's the only work they do. And so other lesser sports don't even get attention, not to talk about youth. As for youth, I don't think they remember that youth is part of their mandate. And so we want a ministry that is going to focus on issues of the youth, especially to do with youth employment and youth empowerment. And that's why we propose that, look, we'll decouple and let the ministry stand on its own. We want to have statistics about young people, what they're doing. This Ejumawura program, for example, is going to be one of the flagships for the youth ministry. It is the project that would assist young people who want to do something for themselves. And so you want to be a baker, we'll help you with the equipment, we'll give you the flour, and then teach you how to bake, how to keep simple accounts. And we're not just going to give it to you and leave you. Every 6 months you'll get a visit to see how the business is going. And if things are not going well, we would help you to straighten things out. If things are going well, that's fine. And we'll continue to visit you for a number of years until you are standing on your own feet. If you want to go into poultry, we'll help you with we'll help you with the poultry, the hen coops, and then kuko kitty. No, they've corrected me. It's Nkukoma. Yeah, but we'll help you with the Nkukoma and the feed. And we'll train you how to use it. And when you get your eggs, you sell. When it's time to sell them for meat, you sell. And you continue to build on it. There are young people who have started with 2,000 beds, 1,000 beds, and they've grown to 10,000 beds. There's one example of a young person I know who's got a poultry farm with 20,000 beds. And he's making quite good money. Okay. The problem with Ghana is the feed. The feed is expensive because maize is expensive, soya bean is expensive. So we have to see how to bring down the cost of feed so that it makes it viable.
The role young people play in your policy implementation?
Yeah, sure. We'll consult them. Yeah. We're going to consult the young people in everything that we do because it's about them. And so we're going to work with them to show what the policies and the programs, we have the youth policy and all that already, but we want to see what innovation we can bring into that sector so that it caters more to the issues of young people.
Okay. And then the Black Stars, what role you play to ensure that you qualify to the World Cup?
It's, the thing about the Black Stars is motivation. I think that they are very demotivated. Actually, morale in the whole country is low because of the crisis we're going through and because we're lumbered with a government that has run out of ideas. And there's hardship across the land, But even though I'm not an expert, I know that at times when the Black Stars have done well, it's because we've had a strong home-based squad that is supplemented by the foreign players. And so you have a home-based squad that are available, and so you camp them and train them, and so they learn to play with each other. And so when you bring the foreign-based players in, and they do a little training together, it's the team begins to click. But when you have Black Stars, that is mostly star-studded players, they are individually talented, but because they are all busy plying their trades in different places, you can't bring them constantly to come and train. So I think that the time has come for us to pick some of the best players in the local teams, and anytime we have time, bring them together and camp them and let them learn to play with each other, start building a home-based team, and then when it's time and the others are free off-season, we can bring them, they can come home and join the players, local players, and be able to see how each of them plays and blend in. That's when we'll begin to have a team. And so that's my own personal thing, but I'm not the GFA, and they guard their turf very jealously. And so,
what do you make of that guard?
Of
the guard they have, their turf?
I don't know. FIFA protects them, and so it prevents the government from interfering in affairs to do with football. And yet when it comes to funding, the government is the first they go to.
Yes.
And government must fund the team. But don't interfere in what we do. So I think that the main issue is demotivation.
Okay.
And we need to bring up the morale of the players. Government can advise. And like I've advised, they should start building a strong, team of domestic players and then blending with the foreign players.
Okay. We have to leave it here. And thank you very much for your time. Let's put our hands together for the former president. And once again, happy birthday.
Thank you.
And then what we do finally is that you just have a minute to speak to Ghana, your final words. I wouldn't mind if you can include sanitation in your final words.
With sanitation, we've said that we're going to shut down that ministry. We're going to merge it back into local government because since we created the Ministry of Sanitation, our country has gotten dirtier than when there was no ministry. And I think that ministry, I don't think it's worth standing on its own. So that's what we're going to do. And then we're going to bring the responsibility for sanitation and cleanliness back to the local assemblies. That is their primary responsibility. So we're going to give their responsibility back to them. But we're looking at amending the constitution so that we can involve chiefs, because all these assemblies are in traditional areas. And in those traditional areas, you have chiefs that exert an influence on their people. But because we've excluded them, the government agencies are not able to enforce the sanitation bylaws. But the chiefs have some influence and respect. And so holding competitions for the cleanest traditional area and rewarding the traditional area with a bus for their traditional council, or giving them, something recognition. Once chiefs get involved, this place will be cleaned up, Right. And so we're thinking about many ideas to do with that. And when we're in office, there were these women who used to come early in the morning by 4 a.m. and then they put the cones, they clean. By the time you come and you're passing in the morning, by 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, the streets is cleaned, all the plastics are gone. I don't know what happened to that. And so we'll look at all that and see how we can bring it back. But my message to Ghanaians is that on 7th December, we are all voting on one day, and so they should ignore the people who are saying that supporters of different parties who vote on different days. We are all voting on one day, from Aflao to Tumu, from Axem to Boko. We are all voting on 7th December. So all of us must come out in our numbers, come and cast our votes. And my appeal goes especially to the floating voters, to tell them, don't sit on the fence, because this is about you. If you refuse to go and vote, other people will take the decision for you. And when they take the decision for you, it will affect you. And if it affects you, it's because you didn't go and vote. But my last message is to the members of the security services and the media, because they are going to vote before us
on Monday.
Yes, I urge them to set the ball rolling by voting for change. They belong to families, they buy from the same market. All of us are suffering the mismanagement of this MPP administration. And so Ghanaians have given them the penalty to kick the first goal. And so the security services and the media like you, please score that goal for us. Score the goal of change so that Ghanaians will follow on 7th December. I also expect that they would act professionally and be neutral in this contest. It is about the future of our country. And so wherever they are posted, they should go and do their best for God and country.
All right. Thank you very much. Okay, so that's it for this evening's presidential encounter. Thanks a lot for your time, and thanks to Star Ghana Foundation for supporting this particular program. On behalf of Doreen and the entire production team, have a good weekend, enjoy your weekend, and keep an eye on our social media platforms. You wouldn't know who next is going to be here. My name is George Sabo. Have a good evening. Bye-bye.